Okay, I'd like to welcome everyone out to the Western Weaver Planning Commission meeting. Today is September 19th. It is 5 o'clock. Go ahead and let the record show that all Planning Commission members are in attendance except for Commissioner Andreotti, which we are excusing him from the meeting tonight. If y'all wouldn't mind standing and reciting the pledge with me. Computers went down. All right, thank you all for that. We're going to start off with our first item on the agenda, our minutes from August 8th. Does anybody have any comments or questions or corrections on our minutes from August 8th meeting? If there are none, I'll entertain a motion to accept those minutes.
Chair, I'll make a motion to accept the minutes from the August 18th meeting.
Okay, I've got a motion. Do I got a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That passes. Thank you, Miss June, for the wonderful minutes. Okay, next item, we're going to move right into our consent items. After reviewing the consent items on the agenda, does anybody have any concerns or wish to remove any consent items from our consent agenda? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve consent items as proposed.
Chair, I'll make a motion to approve all of the consent items on today's agenda.
Okay, I've got a motion. Do I get a second? Second. Got a motion, a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, consent items are passed. All right, we're going to move on to item number 3, our administrative items. First item on the agenda is consideration and action of a preliminary approval of single tree acre subdivision, 25 lots located at 2200 South, 4520 West. Felix.
Yes. Good evening, commissioners. So this is a request of the developer, Mr. Chad Buck. He owns property out in Western Weaver. The rough address here is 2200 South and 4520 West. And they're looking to get preliminary subdivision approval based on the R115 zone code. This property was recently rezoned from agricultural 1 acre to the R115 back in September 5th of 2023. The county commission approved the ordinance to rezone and also the development agreement. And we're going to touch on a little bit of details from the development agreement a little further along the slides. And so here we have the single tree acres subdivision, 25 lots, and the request. And here's this slide shows the area map, and you can see what the current land uses of this property is agricultural, just crop producing land. And then here the development plan is medium density residential, and with the creation of new streets for this residential development, and also pathway easement that would tie in with the new high school there to the east. And the subdivision review in this stage of development, it's strictly looking at preliminary requirements. In this case, what we've gathered from the developer are the will serve letters from the utility providers. The Taylor West Weaver Water District will be providing culinary. Hooper Irrigation is the secondary pressurized irrigation. And then this will also be annexed into the Central Weaver Sewer District. And we also review the preliminary subdivision plat. Here's in this slide, I've included showing the development plan, where you can see the new road coming into this development. And there's on the far north side, north edge, you can see they're dedicating a half width basically 30 feet. And then you also have that road in the around the midpoint that heads also westward. And what I'll do is I'll go to the next slide. Oh, just to touch on the current zoning allowances. So in the R115 zone code requires the 15,000 square foot minimum, and then your lot width of 80 feet. In this case, what the development is planning for is they've taken considerations on roadway design for connectivity to adjacent land, and also for efficiency, for pedestrians. And so they've taken those things into consideration, and their plan is taking advantage of connectivity incentivized development, which allows them to go a little bit smaller with their properties, the minimum lot area of 6,000 square feet and 60 feet. None of these lots are going that small. The smallest one, let me see if I can zoom in a little bit here. Looks like the smallest one's roughly 10,000 square feet. Okay, going to the next slide. So when this property was rezoned, there are some things that were required of the developer in order to qualify for the rezone. Obviously, roadways, the appropriate right-of-way widths, and also that their road cross sections follow the standard for what's been adopted for these new developments. And as you can see, a typical 66-foot wide cross section includes a 10-foot sidewalk on one side and a 4-foot sidewalk on the other, with some street trees. This particular cross section doesn't have the street trees, but that is included as a requirement with the development agreement. And then you also have a cross section for a 60-foot right of way, and that's 1950 south. On the roughly right across from 1950 south, you can see that pathway, and the planning division were able to negotiate with the developer to preserve that area as a pathway dedication area. So in the event that the high school next door is able to provide a connection into the school grounds, then that pathway will become it will be utilized. Moving on to one more thing I'd like to touch on. There was an email that I received this morning from Mr. Roger Heslop, and he was concerned that the development agreement didn't state exactly what was going to be held by what the developer's responsibility was in regard to donations to the Parks District. And so as a means to address that question, then we've actually added that as a condition. So your staff report doesn't show this additional condition, but I wanted to make sure that it was clear that staff feels that it's important, and we want to make sure that it's not going to be forgotten. That way the developer and everybody is aware that the donation to the Park District is still applicable and required. So I'll work through the staff's recommendation. So staff recommends preliminary subdivision approval of single tree acres, a proposal to create 25 residential lots. The conditions: the final subdivision plat and civil plans are submitted and under review by the county engineer and planning division and appropriate review agencies before returning for final subdivision approval. Annexation into the Central Weber Sewer District is underway. The final will serve letters are submitted. And condition 4 mentions the Park District requirement. And that concludes my presentation this evening. Any questions for me?
Commissioners, any questions for staff on this? Okay, any questions for the applicant? If there are none, I will entertain a motion on this item.
Chair, I'll make a motion for approval for item number LVS 060-823. Based on staff recommendations, including the concern of the Park District donation as listed, I'm going to list it as item number 4 under the conditions, and as well as the findings that are represented in tonight's report, staff report.
Okay, I've got a motion. Do I got a second? Got a motion, a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes. Next item. It's going to be item 3.2, consideration and action on a request for preliminary approval of the orchards at JDC Ranch Phase 1 and villas at JDC Ranch Phase 1, located approximately 2850 west, 2600 north in the north end of the unincorporated Weber County. Mr. Burton.
Yes, hello, planning commissioners. Got similar to Felix. Mine won't be as nice as his, but I've got a presentation for you. You've got a request before you for preliminary subdivision approval of a subdivision that includes 2 phases, known as the orchards at JDC Ranch Phase 1 and the villas at JDC Ranch Phase 1. On my screen, you can see the property there on the left, located at approximately 2850 west, 2600 north, near Plain City in the Western Weber County, unincorporated Western Weber County planning area. Zoning of the property, you don't see it on my screen just because the ordinance was recently recorded, but the zoning of the property is R110 and R3 in these locations that we'll be looking at tonight. Soon, the map will be uploaded. We just need to work with our GIS team, and we'll get that done soon. But I just wanted to point that out on the screen. You see that it's A2. It actually is R1 and R3. Excuse me, R110 and R3. The proposal is for, I want to point out, my staff report says 174 lots. I recounted. I was a little bit bored earlier, so I recounted, and it's 172 lots. So I want to make that correction. And I actually I would call them units, 172 dwelling units. Let's say that. Here is a close-up image of the proposal. The orchards are on the east side of this JDC Ranch Boulevard. These are the single-family clustered style lots, and then the villas are on the west side of JDC Ranch Boulevard. What you've got here is an image of the orchards. Here we're looking at 64 single-family dwelling lots. This is property specifically in the R1 and R3, R110 and R3 zones. Just to give you an idea, I'm sure you're all familiar, but R110 allows for single-family lots that are 10,000 square feet in size and 60 feet of lot width. R3 allows for single-family lots that are 3,000 square feet in size with 50-foot lot width. These lots that you're looking at in the orchards range in size from about 3,300 square feet to 9,500 square feet. With a lot, let's see, but the width ranges from 45 feet to 129 feet. The development agreement, I'll show you a picture of the development agreement that was recorded with the property with the rezone. It states that cluster single-family cottages are allowed in this specific location. The development agreement also states that there's no minimum lot size or frontage requirement for the clustered style family cottage lots. So this, how they proposed it, complies with the development agreement. Okay, here's an image of the villas going west here. The villas at JDC Ranch. This consists of 108 attached patio homes. And this is in the R3 zone. The R3 zone allows for 4-plex multifamily dwellings on 12,000 square feet of building area with 50 feet of building width. The development agreement says that attached patio homes with it talks about it says no minimum lot size and no minimum frontage width here. And you know, I'm just spacing on the size of each of these units, so that may be something good to request from the developer. I don't know that I at least am prepared to talk about that right now. Maybe in my staff report. Let's see. This next slide shows the open space plan from the concept plan that was recorded with the development agreement. And I've circled this park that is proposed with this application. I've got a little phrase from the development agreement that talks about how the developer has to complete the park before 100 building permits have been issued. And so we'll have to work pretty closely with the developer to make sure that we get that the residents in that area get that park before more than 100 building permits are issued. And we're prepared to do that. I think that was discussed in pretty great detail when the development agreement was being considered. The park will have a public easement dedicated to the county and will be maintained by the HOA. This is an image of the park. This is the specific concept image of the proposed improvements in the park. This is about a 2-acre park on the development agreement it shows here. The image on this slide on the left is the is the orchards, and it actually shows, I wanted to get these two images side by side to show you that the location, actually not the location, but the layout of the park is a little bit different from the concept plan. As staff, we don't feel it's too different. We don't feel like it's a need to, deny preliminary or final. We feel like they still meet the intent of the concept plan. In my staff report, I mentioned that the park parcel is 6 acres. I should have included that. I should have said that includes the detention area. The park area itself is still about 2 acres, which is what the concept plan anticipated. Okay, this slide shows the proposed park improvements compared to what was at the concept plan. So concept plan's on the right, we looked at a minute ago. And then on the left, you'll see that pretty similar improvements there. When we get to some kind of a final approval and we're looking at a cost estimate from the developer before they record their plat, we're going to want to see in more detail what that playground looks like. And if you want to bring that up and find out a little bit more about that, I think that's fine. It might be good to bring that up with the developer, but something we as staff were planning on doing as we got closer to final, asking those questions. Is there a like a swing set, or what the exact improvements would be to make sure that we get the right financial guarantee for that. Okay, this is going to be confusing to you. I'll explain it. When this application came in, I asked the developer to give me an overlay. I want to make sure that what's being proposed complies with the concept plan just in general, to show where the lots are going. And as I look at this, I can see, yeah, we're talking about the concept plan. They call it the Southeast Village that anticipated for cluster style single family lots. We're also talking about the South Village that anticipated attached patio homes. That's the presentation. Except I will mention about infrastructure. We've received preliminary will serve letters from Bona Vista Water Improvement District for the culinary water, Weber Bucks Elder Conservation District for the secondary water, and Central Weber Sewer for sanitary sewer service. We'll expect to see final approval letters, or what we call capacity assessment letters, as this goes into the final plat approval stage. And then the staff recommendation is approval based on the findings and conditions that are in your staff report. I will say that I believe that the developer or a representative of them is here and may have something to present to you. I'm not too sure.
Steve, I just got one question before we jump to that. So will that 2725 North Street, does it tie into an existing street there? What's that, 3200 West in Plain City?
It does. Yep.
So this phase will tie that in.
Yep.
So there's the access on 2600, then an access over there.
That's correct.
Okay. Go ahead.
One other question. Okay, so you said it was 102 buildings or units. I'm seeing a lot more than 102.
Yeah, so total, we're talking about, let me back up a little bit.
Oh, we went from this, but looking at, I'm seeing like lot 122 over in this region, and I'm also seeing like lot 200 and something in the other.
It's the way that they write their unit numbers based on the phasing.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So So over here, there's 64 single family lots, and over here, there's 108 attached patio units.
Okay.
But the way that
makes
they
more
have their
sense.
phases, yeah, I can see how that could confuse because it's like, oh, number 201.
I didn't count them out,
yeah,
but I was just looking going, well, how is there a 220 when we only have
good
175?
question.
Okay, that makes sense now. I'm sorry to bother you.
Any more questions for staff?
Just one question. Doesn't necessarily pertain to this phase, but seeing where this road comes out over here on the project location map, Stephen, where I think that says 2975 west. So let's be over on the north end of this subdivision. How's that going to line up eventually? So yeah, if you take this road that goes through here and comes out over here, I can't remember. I know that we saw something on this previously, but I can't remember how that connects over there on the north side.
I could find something real quick if you like. It might just take a minute.
Mhm.
Yeah, the future
But
phase
does
will
it
have it
line up
connect.
with the road? Is this an existing road that's there? Okay. Stephen, it sounds like I got an answer to that. So thank you.
Yeah, the development agreement we could pull that up and look at the concept that shows the street layout and show how that connects if you want, but
It's okay.
If
Thank
I
you.
recall, the road you're talking about, I actually think that's where JDC, or was it JDC Boulevard actually goes from 2600 and ties into there. And then they've continued that road all the way through to North Plain City Road. Yep. Any more questions for staff? Any questions for the developer? I don't see. Any questions? If none, I'll entertain a motion on this item.
Chair, I motion that we approve item 3.2 LVJ 070523 on our agenda with all of the staff's recommendations and findings.
Okay, I've got a motion. Do I got a second?
Second.
I've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Okay. Next item, this is going to be a request for preliminary approval of Mountain View subdivision phase 1 consisting of 21 lots located at approximately 1900 south, 7500 west. Miss Aydelotte.
Thank you, commissioners. Let me pull up this presentation real quick here. Okay, this is going to look a little familiar as this has come before you previously. Previous approvals have expired, so this is coming back before you for preliminary approval this evening. This is a 21 lot subdivision located at approximately 7500 west, 1900 south in the A2 zone. This is a lot average subdivision, which allows for lots slightly smaller than what the zone minimum is, which is 40,000 square feet and 150 feet in width. Per our land use ordinance, the lots within this subdivision meet not only the minimums for a lot average subdivision in this zone, but they do meet the minimum average as well overall. Some things to note, I've got here ranges and lot widths and areas. They will, Warren West Warren Water will be servicing this, and the health department has submitted a feasibility letter for septic systems. Now we have requested an updated feasibility letter from the applicant. We haven't got that yet. However, every last thing will be buttoned up before this goes before the county commission. Something else in our land use code to note, we've discussed substandard roads, terminal streets. This is located on one of those actually, and our land use code allows up to 30 residences to access off of this. Otherwise, there has to be some sort of a secondary way in and out for emergency purposes. Previously, you were shown an egress to the west. Right, to the west. I had to stop myself for a second. This time around, they're actually proposing an egress to the east, and I'm going to show you what is being proposed here. There's a lot going on this, so I'm going to try and point out the relevant access here. This is the proposed subdivision off of 7500 West. This is a private railroad crossing at 5900 West here. The applicant is proposing their secondary egress, actually go over 5900 this way here. I'm not quite sure how they're gonna come down, maybe over this way to 7500. This seems to be where the line stops. The applicant is here this evening if you have questions for him. This is a private crossing. We've had many discussions about trying to get additional railroad crossings. There's not really a way to do it with the railroad without having to close down more than what we're requesting to be opened up. And so the applicant is proposing to bridge over this access point. He's also proposing to contribute funds towards that bridge. I think the hope is to work with adjacent property owners and developers to make that happen. We don't have a timeline for that just yet, and the developer may have more information to that. But that is the secondary egress that's being proposed. I think everything else the applicant has addressed for preliminary approval, to be honest. You'll see in your staff report their recommendations for final approval, which they've actually already met, which is why their final approval request is coming right after this one. Do you have any questions for myself at this time?
Commissioners, any questions for staff? I've got questions on the access, but it's going to be more for the applicant, so.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Price? You'll just state your name and address for the record.
John Price, 646 South, 7900 West, Ogden, Utah. It's good to see you guys again.
So fill us in a little bit. I mean, from
Yeah.
your point on that, on why the access changed.
So there was a little bit of confusion. So going west, the landowner, they were working on the inland port. So they didn't want to dedicate anything over to the county because they just didn't know where that road would end up being while they're working on that deal there. So we got with the commissioners, and the access that we're putting in escrow for is not for the railroad, it's actually for the bridge for the river. So the commissioners told us that we could forego the road going west, as long as we can, whatever the cost of the road was, we had to escrow that will go towards future access over or bridge to over the river. And so we were working with Flagship and their project and whatnot to, instead of making a road that was spending a lot of money on a road that will more than likely never get used, put that money to kind of good use to something that will absolutely be used with the bridge. So that's what we worked out with the commissioners in a meeting with them.
So my question's more about the private access point on 5900 West. What agreements are in place for that access?
So that's with all through Flagship's ground there that we're running through. So it actually goes up towards higher up where they own, and it'll go all the way across. They already have all the easements and whatnot in place. So we're actually be using their easement in place, which was what the commissioners gave us permission for.
But I guess more to my point of the question, 5900, that crossing there is private. Have
Yeah,
you guys got the approval through the railroad to take this in for this?
No, we do not. No, this is just what the commissioners told us that we had to do to not go take the westward egress. We had to put that money towards. the
No,
bridge.
and I understand that full point. I just, when it was going west, it would have went across to a county road. The access at 5900 is a private road or private crossing on that railroad. So that's, I guess, the point or the question that I got is,
Yeah.
I mean, getting that cleared through the railroad, and we all know.
And we're not planning on our end, we weren't necessarily planning on using that. Our issue was more towards the escrow, it was build road west or escrow the money. That other road is emergency egress through how we're working that out. I'm not sure what that, what that entails, but we were told to escrow the money for the bridge.
Okay, commissioners.
Yeah, I've got some concerns. Did we not see an egress both directions at one point in time? Between your subdivision and another subdivision, I believe on the east side of 7500.
Yeah, back when it all started, before the bridge was ever brought into question, that was the issue, yes. Now with all the future talks, it's the bridge is now the main concern, the main focus.
Did the commission happen to give you a time frame on that bridge?
No,
And put escrow money?
no, that was the whole reason we had to have the escrow in. So we can't get permits, nobody can get occupancy until that's done. Until our escrow's in, sorry.
Yeah.
Until
And
the
your
bridge.
escrow won't cover the full cost of that
Or
bridge.
the bridge, no, nope, it's just our portion.
So I have some real concerns with the train traffic on that line being parked there, specifically there at 5,900. I've seen it multiple times. We know that some of the farmers that farm there have to leave equipment in the field on the other side of those tracks for days.
Yeah, I jumped the train there before and got in big trouble for it. So apparently that's a big no-no. You're not supposed to jump the train when it stopped there. But yeah, that's an emergency egress only. It's not a through road at all. We're not planning on accessing that unless there was a emergency where the train's fully derailed and wrecked or whatever. So
Well, the concern is that, yeah, it's just an emergency egress, but if a train's parked there, it's pretty hard to move it if there's an emergency. And so that's where my safety concern comes in on this. And I think we spoke at length about this previously, and I get that some things have changed west of this subdivision. But at the same time, nothing else has changed. There's no funding for construction of that road. This money that's going to be escrowed will go toward a bridge that there is no date on. And so if, in my mind, one subdivision goes in using that, the precedence is set for more to go in. And then pretty soon you have a pretty good sized group of homes over there that if that is blocked, a train goes off the tracks somewhere further west and blocks 7,500. We have Western Zirconium way out here. And that's another issue that there is no other way away from in and of itself. And so I have a hard time from a safety perspective of seeing that not having an egress going west makes sense. It just, to me, from purely a safety standpoint, there should be another egress there, because in the best of circumstances, it may just be one or the other.
I'm going to build on that, not to take your deal there. Acting Director Charlie, what does the code say? And then, I mean, if it's not, we don't have the approvals as far as that's the access going through. We don't have the okay from the railroad on a private access. What does the substandard road, or what does it say in that aspect?
It says that there needs to be an egress. The secondary egress needs to be approvable by the fire chief and by the county engineer. That's the limit to what the code says.
Do we have either of those?
no, we're just based purely going off of what we did with the commissioners.
One other question. Now, you said that you worked with, said Flagship owns the egress path right
Mhm.
now.
Yes.
I would assume they'd be interested in the bridge as well.
Yeah.
And would your combined efforts be able to complete the bridge?
They should have, I think they're working on a development agreement right now for the bridge. That'd be a question for Charlie. I believe that's what they're doing, or for Pat in the back. Pat's.
And if you two could work together to make sure the bridge is completed, that would be sufficient. But yeah, it is concerning that it's a private crossing.
Yeah, the bridge is a priority for sure for everyone. That's why we're trying to come up with, that's why they commissioners asked that the funds be put towards, the bridge is a higher priority than the egress road.
Until the bridge is done, then there's the safety
Yeah.
concern. And that
And
could be.
in all reality, in a safety concern, if we had to get people out, so right now there's 40 homes there on south of the tracks. If the train wreck right now, I could get all 40 people out of there. If it crossed over 500, there is enough of a road going west, because there were my cows there.
Mhm.
And there's enough of a road that if there was an emergency, I could get all 40 homes. And I don't see why I couldn't get another 21 people out. I don't think it's I could get 42, but I don't know I could get 43. It's, if there was an emergency today, we could get them all out. Everybody could be out.
I think my concern is a bit with these commissioners as well, is a few more homes turns into a huge development without a bridge that goes through.
And part of the development agreement is that we cannot build a single home until the bridge is, so we can't move on with phase 2 or anything until the bridge is in place. So we can't move on.
Well, the escrow or the completed
The
bridge?
bridge cannot, for phase 2, until the bridge is in, we cannot go on for a phase 2. We can't build any extra homes, any more homes until that bridge is in. That's part of our development agreement that we discussed with the commissioners. So this
Okay.
is just for phase one. We cannot do anything additional beyond this until that is completed.
Okay, and I guess that, then my question would be for Liam and Charlie, if we're limiting how many homes are there. I mean, the primary question is, do we have secondary egress if it's a private crossing? If that can be considered a viable secondary egress and we limit how many homes are allowed at this point, can we stop further developments like the phase two, or is it going to be each developer at a time would be allowed a certain amount of development?
I'll take a stab at this and then let Liam do the legal side of things. We do know that we've got some kind of agreement with the fire district regarding the egress. We did talk about the gate that's at that crossing. And if the fire folks needed to, one of the requirements that we would have for John or anyone else who developed over there would be to put a Knox box on that gate so the fire truck could get through pretty easily. If there's an emergency situation, the private nature of the roadway isn't going to matter as much. For the fire chief, he said he's going to use whatever means he can to get to the people and get them to safety. So I don't know if I'm as concerned about that, but I'll let Liam take a stab at the legal side.
I agree in a large part. If the fire chief has okayed this and if the engineer is going to okay it, they're going to look at it and decide whether it's appropriate or not. If they both okay it, then it's an administrative item right now. It's not really something we get to decide on whether that's okay. If the fire chief says okay and the engineer says okay, it's okay.
What about so I guess each development that comes in would have to go through the same process. And then when we hit a limiting capacity, I'm certain engineering would have a limiting capacity if we have 500 residents trying to evacuate on this substandard road versus.
Yeah. The commissioners have already agreed that there won't be any other development approvals on that side of the tracks and that side of the river until a bridge exists. And so we might see some rezone requests moving through, and they'll obviously be conditioned on a development agreement that says the bridge has got to be installed before you start doing major construction, which means that somebody needs to figure out the right of way connection on the other side of the river as well at that time. But above and beyond that, no one's going to get a building permit on that side, with the exception of these lots. No one's going to get a building permit until that bridge is in.
And I guess my last question is, we are really, really far out into the extents of Western Weber. What kind of an impact are we going to see? I guess I'm not sure if it's moot at this point, but there's a lot of road going out to this area, and we're talking septic as well.
Yeah, so as far as I understand, septic has already been addressed by the health department and approved. Road infrastructure, 7500 West isn't great. John will be required to improve at least his frontage. We'll be evaluating with the engineer if there's any other part of 7500 West that needs to be improved when he gets to before final with his county commission. As far as 12th Street goes, the county has addressed most of its portion of 12th Street from the river to 7100, and the county will be widening from 7100 even further west. I want to say to 8300 with this next funding cycle. And so as far as impact goes, I don't think we'll find a significant impact enough to suggest that transportation alone is a reason to say no.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioners, if I would make a suggestion, I mean, if you're comfortable with this, maybe we can condition the letters from the fire department and the county engineer on that access. Just listed as one of the conditions on there.
Commissioners, one of the things that the fire chief did tell me a couple years ago when we were first talking about this potential emergency access is if there is a train there, there is a requirement for when dispatch calls the train dispatch that they've got to be out there within a certain period of time and decouple the cars and make space for fire apparatus to get through. The amount of time that takes in reality versus in theory or in practice might be a little bit different, but the fire chief didn't seem super concerned about the idea that they might need to decouple the cars and push the train apart.
Thanks, Charlie. Any other questions for the applicant? If not, I'll entertain a motion on this item.
Chair, I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion to approve item number. What number is this? LBM 04222021. For staff recommendations with the following, in addition to the staff recommendations, item 4, an egress to 10,000 west, as was proposed previously. And condition 5, which is approval by the engineering and fire for Weber County, along with the other findings that are available on tonight's staff report.
Okay, I've got a motion. Do I got a second? Got a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I just want to clarify. So you are okay, you're saying keep to the east, but make sure we get approval from from fire and engineering or?
And to the west. And egress to the west. The old.
So you're asking for both
Yeah.
egresses to be in addition to the primary egress?
Yes.
So be going both ways. Okay.
Sorry, Commissioner Favero,
Come into that. Oh, no, sorry.
will you just repeat that fourth condition that you made, please?
The fourth condition is and the addition of egress to 10,100 west, whatever that road is out there. 10,800 west.
Okay, I've got a motion placed in a second. We'll call for a vote on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Aye. Commissioner Clontz.
I'll go aye.
Okay,
I mean, or nay, I guess is the opposed.
yeah. Can you clarify for me? Sorry. You in favor or against?
I'm against.
Okay. So we've got a split vote, 3-3, so that motion dies.
I'll make a motion, Chair.
Okay,
A motion that we approve items. Let me get my agenda, the right agenda. 3.3 and 3.4, both the preliminary and final approval of Mountain View subdivisions. Phase 1. Based on all the staff recommendations and findings in both the preliminary, both items 3.3 and 3.4. With an additional recommendation that egress to the east is reviewed and approved by engineering and fire prior to county commission.
okay. I've got a new motion placed, which just clarification, it's the same motion other than it took the west commitment out, correct?
Correct.
Okay,
But it's also for preliminary and final.
It's for preliminary and final.
that is true. It's on here. I'm gonna refer to Liam. Can we do that?
Yeah, if you want to do them both at the same time, it's up to you.
Okay. You still good for both of them?
Yes.
Okay, I've got a motion placed. Do I got a second?
I'll second.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. This time I'm gonna roll call the vote so I can try and keep it straight. Sorry, Miss June. Commissioner McCormick. Commissioner Favero,
No.
Commissioner Wickern,
Aye.
Commissioner Neville,
Nay.
Commissioner Hunt.
Aye.
I'm gonna vote nay on it as well, just because I don't like that we combined them. So the nays pass. So what do we do now? Liam?
Would you be interested in the same proposal, but doing preliminary and final separate?
Yes. If you want,
Okay.
if you want to amend your motion.
I will amend my motion that we only do preliminary with the same conditions.
Okay. All right, do I have a second on the amended motion?
Second.
Okay, I've got a second on the amended motion. I'll call for any discussion, sorry. Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Commissioner McCormick.
Nay.
Commissioner Favero,
Nay.
Commissioner Wickern,
Aye.
Commissioner Neville,
Aye.
Commissioner Clontz.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, so that passes. Okay, we're gonna move on to our next item, which is essentially the same item, but recommendation for final approval on this one. And any other comments, questions, or concerns? My only hang up on this one is I'm just really concerned. Move it through. Without seeing those approvals coming through on that road, but. That's,
If we're conditioning for it, then at least we can
so
make progress.
essentially the condition in your previous one conditions it before county commission use it, so they've got to have that addressed.
Yes.
But everything else within this meets the code. Charlie, I got a question for you. Just a point of clarification for myself, maybe a few others. Everything in this meets everything within the code, except for having that approval letter from the engineer and the fire, Weaver Fire District.
Yeah, as part of the approval letter from the engineer, we'll need to see engineer drawings of that egress. So we need to know how it's going to be constructed and what it's going to be constructed of. And same with fire. As far as everything else goes, I think it meets the code.
And does the county look at any approvals through that, where this one is a private crossing? Will they require any approvals from Union Pacific where it's now getting changed to a private crossing with an emergency egress across it?
I think that's well within your purview to recommend. We haven't asked the applicant to pursue that avenue, but I think it's within your purview to ask of the county commission.
So I can't make a motion as a chair, but I would make a recommendation that we add that as a condition that access gets approved through Union Pacific to be used as an emergency egress as well as the private access for those existing. Does anyone have a problem with that? Okay. Any other comments or questions on that? Okay, I will call for a motion if you guys are ready.
I motion that we approve item 3.4 on our agenda. Final approval of Mountain View Subdivision Phase 1 with all the recommendations and findings in our packet. With one additional recommendation that the egress is approved through both the engineering, fire, and Union Pacific prior to county commission going to county commission.
Let me fit, well, yes, you can.
I just want to make sure we can understand.
Yes,
Okay.
if we've met the ones before, I'm okay with. And we're just being a little bit more clear, but it is spelled out more in item number 3. And then we added a little more in item number 5.
Perfect. Okay, I've got a motion on the table. Do I got a second?
Second.
Yeah, I've got a motion and a second. Any discussion?
For Charlie, so they have met the recommendations of the staff?
They have, yeah. So other than the conditions of approval that we have listed in the staff report, they have.
And egress also depending on what happens here.
That's right.
All right, I'm going to call for a vote on this item. Commissioner Collins,
Aye.
Commissioner DeVille,
Aye.
Commissioner Workin,
Aye.
Commissioner Favero,
Nay.
Commissioner McCormick.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. That passes. Okay, thank you. All right, on to our next section, legislative items. First item on our agenda for there is going to be item 4.1, Halcyon Open Space. This is a public hearing, discussion and possible action on a request for approval of a zoning map amendment to rezone 10 acres of property located at approximately 1600 South, 4100 West. Acting Director Charlie, will you just give a rundown on how this process is going to work?
Yeah, thank you. So this is a legislative item. Planning Commission, you've got wide discretion on your approval authority on this one. Whereas the previous items you were looking at was an administrative item where you just had to follow the code and check the boxes. This one, you've got a lot of opportunity. If you can make positive findings for health, safety, and welfare, general plan, as well as logical build out when it comes to growth, You could make a positive recommendation. If you can't make findings similar to that, you can make a negative recommendation. If you're concerned about the decision, you could certainly table the item. Your decision tonight will be in the form of a recommendation to the county commission.
Thank you. Mr. Bill, what do you got for us?
Oh, I've got a lot for you. This is a application for a rezone from A1 to RA15. This involves 10 acres of land that is adjacent to the existing Halcyon Estates subdivision. It's located approximately here. You can see it on our general plan in the area that's circled. It's slated to be open space. It is open space. It's not being occupied by anything other than some weeds right now. But this was part of open space. Say again? Are there pumpkins? Perfect. This was dedicated open space as part of the initial phases of the Halcyon development. And so as part of the consideration for the density that they got in the initial phases, this was dedicated as open space. The request tonight would change that from dedicated open space as part of the initial phases to something that could be developed in a way that's similar to what's already approved to the south and anticipated in the zoning to the north. General plan talks about preservation of open space. One of the difficult things about open space is that once you develop it out, it's gone. It's never open space ever again. So if we're looking to change this from what it currently is zoned at and dedicated at, that's something that we ought to really carefully consider. Here are some general plan applicability smart growth principles. And you can see that the third principle there is open space and recreation facilities. The requested zone would allow for residential on roughly third acre lots, 15,000 square foot lots. And this is where the property currently is, just in case there was any question. I think we all are familiar with this. And again, the current zoning is A1. This is the conceptual layout. This would be a connectivity incentivized subdivision when it comes to that point, if it comes to that point. So they've got those lots and streets laid out accordingly. There are some issues and concerns that staff has going forward with this. We mentioned those both last week in the work session as well as in the pre-meeting meeting. There were some guarantees and stipulations that were put on the property to the south when it was approved in consideration for some additional density. Principal among our concerns is street trees. You have a memo that or an email that I printed out and gave to you earlier that discusses those street trees. The developer has made some effort to try to address that. We haven't seen anything in writing from the property owners, and there's an open question whether or not legally this satisfies the need of the agreement that's already in place and governs the development of this property. But as Charlie pointed out, there's pretty broad discretion given to you to adjust and make recommendations based on changing ideas and considerations. And so we're recommending, staff is recommending denial. This is one of those cases where I wish that staff didn't have to make a recommendation for legislative items, because this discretion is given to you. And but staff, after having looked through the code as well as in keeping with the general plan, which calls for this to be open space, finds that there is reason to deny this application for a zone change. And that could be either until the other these outstanding items get resolved, or just denial. I mentioned earlier, this is only the second time in my career where I've been part of a staff report where we recommended denial, and it's not something I do lightly. So that's what we have. There are some stipulations and recommendations in the staff report that I'm sure you're familiar with. If you have any questions, we're here to help. Their applicant is here as well if you have questions. So with that, we'll leave it to you guys for questions if you have.
Any questions, excuse me, any questions for staff on this item? Okay, I think before we go through and bring the applicant up, I would like to open the public hearing and see what we've got, public comments, and then I've got some questions at that time we can address then. So if you're good with that. Okay, a little bit before I ask for a motion to open this public hearing, just want to kind of set the tone on it. So we're going to open a public hearing for items for discussion on this item. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes if at all possible. If someone come up and mention something, you know, you can come up and say, I agree. You know, a lot of it coming back and forth, a lot of the same comments. We see those generally. So just in the respect of everybody's time on this. So with that, I will entertain a motion to open a public hearing on this item.
Chair, I'll make a motion to open public hearing.
Okay, I've got a motion. Do I got a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we are now in public hearing for this item on the Halcyon open space rezone. Any people from the public wish to come up and speak on this item?
Roger Heslop, 1657 South, 4700 West, Ogden. As has already been stated, this ground was set up as open space. And the density was already awarded under the old plan. As we look through the new general plan under land use item 147, it talks about adoption of park amenitized and subdivision tools applicable to areas that are designated for medium-sized lots, requiring no less than 50% of open space donation. As a park board, we have looked at this property. It is within about a quarter of a mile from an existing parcel that we have. As we have visited with the developer some time ago, and that we looked at possibilities. One of the problems we had was that the existing land we had did not have water. They have some access water and had agreed with the park district that they would provide for us 5 shares of water. As we looked at the open space, and because of the proximity to the existing park area that we had, as a park district, we felt that because it was designated as open space area, the fee per individual house should be higher than a normal subdivision that is coming into the park district. Because technically we could take and say, no, we want it developed into a park, which the current and new general plan says that is appropriate, and that is something that the subdivider could look at. We don't feel that that would benefit us as much as taking the development fee and applying it towards the existing park, that ground land that we have, as well as looking at the water that would be benefited from it. And that we met with the developer and we told them that we would support their decision to subdivide as long as those conditions got met as part of the park development. Thank you.
Brad Nelson, 1721 to Giorgio Street. Our property backs up to this development here. And to go back a little bit, I guess the issue, and I've spoke with a lot of the neighbors in there that couldn't be there tonight, but I'm just speaking for myself here. There's been a lot of false promises in this development. Starting with, you know, we moved out here to a 1A for, you know, an acre. I didn't want neighbors right in my backyard. I would not sign the second plot that came before you guys for the smaller subdivision to be rezoned. And due to that, it somehow ended up, even though I was a landowner, I got bypassed and left in Halcyon Lake Estates. I don't know how that happened because we weren't notified of it until the building started. And then I contacted you guys and I was just reassured that I was still in a legal subdivision. The problem that I see with this is, one, we were told there was supposed to be a park put over there and the trees. They haven't fulfilled that, period. We were against, like I said, we were against this in the first place, the smaller lots. It's quoted right here in the Standard Examiner in 2019 by one of the developers, and I quote, where was it? Basically that we're catering to a higher standard of people when they were trying to get the lake pushed through, okay? And then he also states in here, we're not shoving a lot of people in an area and disrupting the environment out here, Breachley said. I think that's a Brenchley, one of the developers. So there he's stating, we don't want a bunch of people in here, but yet they filed for a PhD and put a bunch of housing right in my backyard, which affects my lot, especially because if I want to build a shop, I'm now going to have to be I can't be within 40 feet of any dwelling or house, I guess is what I was told. The lot that's right behind my house is a 0.22. You put and with the recommendations of the house sizes, I might have to push my shop now, instead of my 10-foot easement that I have right now, I might have to go 20 feet or 30, and I'm eating into my lot. So I don't know. There's just been a lot of promises and a lot of things that we have text messages from them when all this went down. That this would not be, this was in an easement that could never be taken out of, is what we were told. And I was like, well, I'm in the construction business. If it goes before the board, it can be voted on. These were the things they were telling a lot of people. Like I said, I'm not for it. That's why I'm here today. And I appreciate I know it's hard. I've spoke with you on the phone, Bill. There's other issues that we've had with this. I know it's never hard to deny somebody what they can do with their property, but it's also my right, as this was 1A. They've been dedicated the extra lots over there with that supposedly staying in. And I agree with that. And I think it should stay farm ground. So thank you.
Jake Larson, 4082 West, 1700 South. I'll just kind of keep it short, but yeah, farm ground. I mean, acre lots. That's kind of why we all built out there. That's kind of the promises that were made that were never kept. So I think that as far as keeping it that way, I think we need to keep it that way. And that's the way the neighbors out there, that's kind of why we're out there. That's what and they've got their land that they've already done the smaller lots. And I mean, that's kind of the way we want to keep it. And that's kind of what we've all kind of agreed upon back then. So I think we need to keep it that way. And like I said, I'll keep it short, but that's kind of why we're here, to kind of stand up for that. So I'll just keep it short and leave it at that.
Brad Brown, 719 West, 4350 South. I actually own the property just to the north of this one. And I wanted to voice my support of this project. We've worked a long time with the staff. with Roger, trying to have a good cohesive, following the general plan the best we could. And as far as open space, yeah, I thought we had that settled a long time ago with Roger and the Parks Department but also we worked a lot with Charlie on the connectivity, which is important part of the plan. And that only works if we connect everything that we've been talking about for over a year now. But again, I think I don't want an unused open space that will never become a park backing up onto my property. I think that this is a good compromise, what has been, contemplated and agreed to. So again, Brad Brown vote, I give my support.
Any further comments on this item? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Chair, I'll make a motion to close public hearing.
A motion, do I got a second?
Second.
Motion, a second, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, any opposed? Okay, we're now out of public hearing. All right, kind of listened through some of these comments. I'm gonna kick it off with my concerns with this one as well. First off, I agree, the commitments was not met in the original phase of this. It's kind of a sticking point for me. I didn't agree with the street trees when they originally went in, but it was part of the code, part of getting that density. The second part of that is essentially they moved the density off this 10 acres into the smaller portion there, and which put a covenant on this 10 acres to remain open space. Therefore, I don't think this ground has any density to be built on unless TDRs or development rights are purchased somewhere else and brought to this property. So my thoughts. Anyone else?
Chair, I agree with your points. I'm very concerned with how the first phase has developed, and I'm not opposed to developing the open space with the arrangements of making sure the park district is adequately subsidized and development rights are purchased, because there are no development rights for this property. I'm concerned about not having connectivity, like Brad Brown stated, if we do not develop the property. However, this particular rezoning, the way it is stated, I don't think I can support. I think it needs to be changed from the cluster subdivision to something different, and we would have to extensively figure out how to get building rights on this property that does not have building rights.
Any further comments or questions, commissioners? If none, I will entertain a motion on this item.
Chair, I'd like to make a motion. Motion to recommend denial, file ZMA 2023-11. I do so with the findings that are in our staff report and the recommendations. Thank you.
I've got a motion on the table. Do I got a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Commissioner Clance.
Aye.
Commissioner Neville.
Aye.
Commissioner Wickern.
Aye.
Commissioner Favero.
Aye.
Commissioner McCormick.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well, unanimous on a denial on that item. Okay. Next item on our agenda is going to be item 4.2, Alley Farms. This is going to be another public hearing, discussion and possible action on a request for approval of a zoning map amendment of approximately 25.21 acres. Property is located at 900 South, 4700 West in the A1 zone, and they are asking to go to the RE15 zone, roughly 15,000 square foot lots. Charlie, you got anything for us on this one?
Nope, same, other than the same discussion as before, legislative item, you've got wide discretion. This does require a public hearing, as you did with the last item.
Okay, Mr. Bill.
Right, thank you very much. This is Alley Farms. It is, as you mentioned, about 25, well, a little more than 25 acres, located approximately 900 south, 4700 west. Respond. Okay, here's where it looks, here's where it is and how it looks on the general plan map. You can see it's slated for a couple of different kinds of things there in mixed-use residential and mixed-use commercial. We talked with the developer about this a week ago, and they came up with a pretty good plan, I think, to kind of provide that different mix and transition of uses. I've also included in here for your reference a screen grab of the street regulating plan, showing that this is a village center and what kinds of streets and uses are anticipated for this area. So again, we're finding something that's kind of a mix of different kinds of uses. The general plan calls for, again, a mixed use residential to provide opportunities for housing choices and options. And then with the mixed use commercial, again, there are some residential opportunities and things that we discussed last week. There were the smart growth principles. Here is the residential zone purpose statement. This is where the property is located. You see it's just north of 12th Street. And here is what the current zoning is. And this would be the requested zoning. You've got RE15 towards the west and just a little bit of R3 rather on the east side of the property. And this is the conceptual development layout. Again, we looked at this last week. This is included also in your memo that I sent out as an update to the staff report that went out. The other thing to mention is that one of the concerns that we had was with regard to the payment to the park district. That's what I just passed out to you. This just came in again later yesterday evening. So they have apparently resolved some of the concerns there, and the park district is now given their support to the proposed zoning map amendment. And that's all I've got, unless you've got any questions for me. Staff is recommending approval of this one.
This isn't number 3?
No.
All right.
Goodness.
Thank you, Bill. Any questions for staff before we open public hearing?
I have a question. Maybe it's not for Bill, maybe it's more for Charlie or Liam. I'm on the letter that you gave us, right? I have questions about that, on what our role is with this Parks District stuff. In our work session, we were, trying to figure out a way to help them figure out what the amount was that should be given, and there was a big discussion on that. And then, there was some confusion there as well. But then we've been told that it's up to the Parks District, right? And I read this letter, and the letter from the Parks District, the last paragraph on here confuses me, because this is a donation and it's what we're supposed to have in agreement for these developers to have. But then in my opinion, the last paragraph of this letter makes it so that there's no teeth in anything that they're asking for. So I'm just going to read that statement, if that's okay. Says this letter does not contractually bind the developer to provide the donation to the district. Rather, it is a commitment from the district that if the developer provides the donation to the district will support the developer's proposed subdivision of a single and multifamily units as associated rezone. This is a lot different than what we get from any of our other districts, sewer, water, all that. So I'm just, what is our role, how this works? Like, I feel like we've been unofficially charged to create the standard or to help create that standard, but yet we're not. When we have something like this, it kind of throws that all out, right?
Yeah. So the part of this, the concern with this might be that at this stage of the game, we don't know how many lots there will be in the development exactly. We've been given a conceptual layout with some multifamily and with some smaller lots that are included in this subdivision. So this may change. And I think that's why they wrote this last paragraph in there, is to give them an out and an opportunity for some additional negotiation as it goes through the development and subdivision process.
So I'm sorry, Bill, and maybe I'm mistaken, but the only thing that I read as far as the out is for the developer.
Right, so the way that we make this binding as a county is we put as a stipulation of approval that they go through a development agreement process, and where this is more fleshed out and given more teeth.
Okay.
It's in the development agreement process that we as the county gets our guarantees and the stipulated, I don't want to say conditions because that's a weighted term, but the requirements and things that we need to see resolved. And so one of them would be an actual approval letter from the Parks District saying that they are okay with it. So that development agreement would be something that staff and the county commissioners work out and would include the Parks District in that process.
Okay.
Does that make sense? And Charlie, Liam, any? Okay, good.
Thank you, Bill.
Yeah.
And just to be clear, it's not anything about this particular development. It's happened to come up during this proposal.
Yeah,
so.
and it's important because it's something that I think we're going to see a lot more of as people come through with these zone changes and with subdivisions that are subject to development agreement. So it's a great question.
Okay, any further questions for staff? If not, I'll entertain a motion to open a public hearing on this item.
I'll make a motion to open a public hearing.
I got a motion. Do I got a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we're now in a public hearing for the Alley Farms rezone. Anybody from the public wish to come and speak to this item? Wow. Crickets. Okay, no one wishes to speak. I'll entertain a motion to close public hearing on this item.
So moved.
Got a motion? Do I got a second?
Second.
Motion a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes. Okay, we're now out of public hearing. Now, time for discussion. Any questions, comments, concerns for staff on this one? Any questions, comments, or concerns for the developer? Wow. Okay, if none, I will entertain a motion on this item.
I'll make that motion. It's a really nice one in the packet. I move that we approve files EMA 2023-13 and applicant driven rezone application to amend the zoning map on 25 and 2 acres from A1 to the R115 and R3 zone property located approximately 900 South, 4700 West Ogden. I do so with the findings from our packet.
Hey, I've got a motion. Do I get a second on that motion?
Second.
Got a motion, a second. Any discussion?
Oh, that's good discussion. And I'm trying to find the memo now.
There's a memo we were emailed.
Well, I will amend my motion to include item number 6 from the memo.
Okay, I've got a amended motion.
Second.
Still got a second on that amended motion. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, I will call for a vote. Commissioner Clance,
Aye.
Commissioner Neville,
Aye.
Commissioner Wickern,
Aye.
Commissioner Favero.
Aye.
Commissioner McCormick.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, that passes unanimously. Okay, next item, obviously, this is the item you all have been waiting for. And I'm quite shocked that we're on this item, seeing our agenda at
Jinx us.
6:20. So
Just let Rick know what a great meeting I helped you run.
I'm gonna, from now on, he's out. Charlie, you're in. All right, this item is gonna be a public hearing to consider a proposal to rezone approximately 7.44 acres from A2 agricultural, zone to R3 residential, C1 commercial, and MPD overlay zone, property located at 3300 South, 3500 West. Mr. Burton.
Yes, commissioners, Chair, you just read my first slide for me, so thank you.
Hey, you're welcome. My
second slide here, you said the location as well, 3300 South, 3500 West. on the screen here, you can see the project location, 7.44 acres. You can see it's really close. It runs adjacent to the West Haven city boundary. I've got an image on the left showing you the existing zoning, and the image on the right shows you the proposed zoning, which is C1 along 3300 and 3500 West, about 60 foot of depth there to allow a street front commercial building, and then the rest of the property in the back is proposed to be R3 to allow for a townhome development. Let's see here. When we as staff, when we get a rezone, we always like to look at the general plan. We've talked about that a lot tonight. You can see on this screen, I've got the property highlighted in red, just the general location of this property. Future land use map shows it as a mixed use commercial area. I got a few things from the general plan I'll point out. One of them, although this specific quote, I believe, is talking about a different zone. I think it has a good quote that I like that talks about how a developer should be proposing some kind of benefit to the general public, and I'll get to what this developer is proposing as one of those benefits. I've also got some sentences, some paragraphs here about what the general plan says as far as mixed use commercial goes. I won't read it specifically, but mixed use typically meaning commercial and residential. These areas, there should be wide walkable sidewalks with a main street feeling and nice building facades that fit into the surrounding area. General plan applicability general plan talks about smart growth standards. In this case, I would say that at least it is the opinion of staff, that this developer has proposed some public street and trail connectivity, as well as some meaningful contribution to open space. On this image is just what I received from the developer, a letter of support from the Taylor West Weaver Parks District, talking about a specific donation per lot. That seems to be quite a bit more than some of the other donations that have been done in the past, or proposed in the past, I should say. General plan applicability, I'm going to throw an image from West Haven City's general plan on here so that you can see that as well. This is really close to West Haven, and it's also in their annexation area. West Haven shows it as C2 as a possibility. Currently, I believe it's it's in the unincorporated area. So if it were to be annexed, I believe the city would be looking to do something like C2, although I can't speak for the city. I don't believe C2 allows any kind of residential, so that's a little bit different than what is the applicant's proposing to the county. Okay, I wanted to show you existing conditions of the property. You can see there's not much to it right now. It's farmed. There's an agricultural building out there, maybe a trailer or two as well. Here is a concept plan. It's proposed by the applicant. You can see commercial buildings in the first 60 feet of depth along 3300 South and 3500 West. The parking and commercial parking will be behind those buildings. The applicant is proposing R3 on the rest of the property. Their concept plan, if you were to count, you can kind of see some townhome units. If you were to count them all out, I believe the applicant was originally proposing somewhere around 68 townhome units. There's a couple of 5, 6, and 7 plexes that you can see there. And let's see here. This is what the applicant gave us as far as what the buildings might look like. I believe there was a development that they did in Davis County, similar to what they're doing here, where it is in an agricultural zone, and they want to try to capture some of the elements of a farm community. Now, you can't really see too well in this image, but in these commercial buildings on the left, they have wood or false wood fronts and similar architectural features as you might see out west in like with barns out west. Over here on the right, you see what they're proposing for the townhomes. Similar architecture, wood or faux wood. They're also doing like a brick or stone wainscots. Pretty common what you see in the market today as far as townhomes go. Talk a little bit about The standards, the development standards for C1 and R3. For C1, because that's the commercial zone. We're talking about, when I say complete street, I mean that normally in a C1 zone, a developer would be required to build a walkable street front. In this case, we would want a development agreement to capture that he's going to be doing some kind of a main street feel like the general plan talks about. So a complete street, 10-foot sidewalk would be required out in front of the buildings. There are also some side yard setbacks unless there is some kind of a building maintenance agreement with adjacent property owners. Max building height is 35 feet. I realize, let's see, lot minimum, there's no minimum lot area when it comes to C1 or minimum lot width. R3, when we're talking about the townhomes, we're looking at 15-foot front yard setback, 8-foot side, 20-foot rear, 35-foot building height. The developer, I just took, between their 5, 6, and 7 plexes. I wanted you to be aware the R3 zone for a 6-plex requires about 16,000 square feet of building area for a 6-plex. With what the developer is proposing, they have enough area to do the 68 that they're proposing. If this were to be rezoned, it actually may have a little bit more area to do closer to between 70 and 80 townhome units. Okay, now the fun stuff. When it comes to a rezone, there are, as you're well familiar with, and I think Bill went over a few of these with you as well, there are some considerations that the land use code recommends that the legislative body make when it comes to rezones. And I'll talk about these briefly. The first one talks about whether the proposal is compatible with the overall character of the area. And so, as you know, as we looked at these maps, the surrounding area consists of mainly agriculture, except the area to the north that's in West Haven City appears to be a mixed-use development called Highlands Ranch Subdivision with a commercial lot and some single-family lots that are about 10,000 square feet in size. The Western Weaver General Plan anticipated a small-scale mixed-use development similar to that development in West Haven across the street. The proposal to rezone to C1 with townhomes behind the buildings, the staff were not thinking that is too incompatible with the surrounding area where it is pretty close. Now, there aren't townhomes in the area. I don't feel that there needs to be townhomes right across the street. I don't feel it needs to match exactly. But our general plan also talks about some kind of a missing middle, and this developer is proposing that missing middle that the general plan talks about can be townhomes. I want to mention when the application for rezoning was initially submitted, I believe it was submitted back in February. And so it has not, for anyone to come here and say that this is happening too fast, I would say we've taken our time with this one. The developer's been good to work with and take the time to make sure we get it right. When it came in, we let the developer know, hey, we'd like you to talk to West Haven City. We want that to happen organically with them. We'd love it if you were to annex. And I believe there were some work sessions that happened with the developer and the city. I wasn't at those, so I can't tell you exactly what happened, but I believe that the city's here tonight and the developers here, they could give you both their thoughts. There have been work sessions with the county commissioners as well, and there's been a work session with you, the planning commission. The applicant, for whatever reason, chose not to continue the conversation about annexing into the city, and I'm sure we'll hear more about that tonight. But they have proposed to be considered for a rezone tonight. The second consideration here, to what extent do you feel the proposal will adversely affect property in the area? As you've seen with a lot of development that happens, the county has procedures and regulations in place that mitigate some of those potential effects. We require subdivision applications, we require engineered drawings, we require engineered plans, we require design review and site plan review, which will be other steps that this developer will have to go through, where we do catch a lot of those adverse impacts. And I believe that the way that the land use code is written is it should mitigate really most of those adverse impacts that may come up. We're talking about sensitive lands, another consideration, number 3. When I looked at the property, it's not in any kind of floodplain. There are no wetlands on the property. There are also no any excuse me, there are also no geologic hazards mapped on the property. Fourth consideration, traffic mitigation plans. If we think that our corridors will diminish below an acceptable level of service, we didn't require a traffic mitigation plan for this specific rezone. When we do require those are often at a subdivision level. But you're welcome to request one at this point. We just have not asked for one yet, as we don't feel one is needed at this point. Let's see, where am I at? 5, adequacy of facilities. I haven't reached out to police or fire. I don't know that, 70 townhomes would put our existing services and infrastructure would push that over some kind of threshold to need to talk to those services. So I haven't reached out to police or fire. They haven't specifically requested that we do that. So we haven't done that. But it is something that you can consider as a legislative body. If you wanted to have them at the table, we could certainly get them here. When it comes to parks, the general plan does not anticipate a park in this location. But the general plan does say that a meaningful contribution to open space should be given by certain developers. And this developer, as we talked about a little bit earlier, has a letter of support from the Parks District and is proposing a certain dollar amount per unit. So commissioners, as you know, there are several actions you can take. You could approve the proposal if you felt that it met the general plan, or if there were some other findings you wanted to make. You're also welcome to deny the rezone if you feel it doesn't meet the general plan, or maybe the timing is not right, or maybe you want to give West Haven City some more time to think about it, or the developer more time to work there with West Haven City. You're also welcome to table it if you have other information that you'd like either staff or the applicant to bring back to you. I will say that the staff recommendation is in the staff report that I believe you've read. It is to approve the proposal to R3C1 in the MPD overlay zone based on the following findings. 1, the applicant and the county will enter into a mutually agreeable development agreement specifying the design of the commercial and multifamily buildings, and that the proposed donation of the Parks District will be made before each subdivision plat records. The agreement will also include street tree, pathway, and trail and timing requirements as determined by the planning staff and county commission. The other 2 findings are really important as to why I made my recommendation to approve. One of them is because the general plan anticipated this. This is a mixed-use commercial proposal. The other reason is because it includes a meaningful contribution to open space and parks, which I believe is also supported by the general plan. But that being said, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have as you make your recommendation.
Any questions, staff, before we open a public hearing on this item?
Steve, can you remind me what an MPD overlay zone is?
Yep, master plan development overlay zone.
So it's just requiring them to go through the whole development agreement process when we put that in place, or what's the reason for that?
So an MPD overlay zone, I'll say it's actually not needed for the developer to do what they want to do here. Now it is helpful in that it can tie the 2 projects together. It ties the commercial together with the residential, but it's not necessarily needed. When I say MPD overlay zone, I'm just referring to the applicant originally applied. They had that language in their application. They wanted an MPD overlay zone. But backing up a little bit, a reason why somebody might propose an MPD overlay zone, JDC Ranch is a good example. They have an MPD overlay zone because the R3 and the R110, it had the base density and the general zoning that they wanted. But if you can get an MPD overlay zone on top of that, it allows a little bit of flexibility in your design. Okay. And so in this case, they're not actually asking for any flexibility in design. It's included in their application. And so we're saying, yeah, we could do an MPD overlay zone. There'll still be a development agreement. You don't actually need to. There will be a development agreement even if there's not one.
Okay.
Any other questions for staff? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to open a public hearing on this item.
I'll make a motion to open a public hearing.
Got a motion. Do I got a second?
Second.
Got a motion, a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that passes. We are in a public hearing on this item. If you'll come up, please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Sherry Fippen, the address 4150 South, 3900 West. I am the Community Development Director for West Haven City. I appreciate the opportunity to offer comments on why West Haven City strongly believes that this rezone and MPD should be denied or at the very minimum tabled. I understand that you guys have a copy of a memo that West Haven City put together. I want to publicly thank Steve for providing that to you and also for giving me feedback. I disagree with some of the feedback, but you know, it happens. And but I am very appreciative of the time that he took to provide that feedback for me. I do want to correct one thing that he said about Highlands Ranch and the residential that's around it. Those are actually two entirely separate projects brought in by two different developers. It is not a mixed-use project. West Haven City has anticipated that certain areas as the city grows north and west will be commercial corridors. And that is one of those. So I just wanted to clarify that. As was stated in the memo, there's a long planned road connecting 3300 South down to 3600 South, which will run from 3500 West to 2700 West. And that road's intended to facilitate a large amount of east-west traffic, not just in West Haven City, but also in all of Weber County, Western Weber County. That has been in the works for a long time. It has been and received funding from WACOG. The city is right now at the point where we're awaiting a proposal from a traffic planning and highway design team to determine the exact, basically what both ends, both the east and west ends of that road will be. If a concept was approved on this property, if a rezone was, if an MPD overlay was approved, that would potentially significantly detrimentally affect this major east-west connector for Weber County. The city is more than happy to work with the county on the design points of that road to ensure critical long-term infrastructure projects. Like I said, with major infrastructure implications. We are significantly concerned that the city and the county will be irreparably harmed from providing efficient engineered infrastructure and road projects based on a short-term zone change at this time. With regard to the sewer, we are aware that Central Weber may have annexed this property in. However, there has not been contact or review or approval or concurrent capacity analysis by the West Haven Special Service District, who is the actual provider of sewer services. In addition to the traffic and sewer issues, the memo you were each provided with outlines several ways this project does not actually comply with the Western Weber General Plan. It's not the intent of this plan that this property have clearly delineated commercial and residential uses. The mixed use commercial in the Western Weber General Plan talks about how they're to be blended together with the residential clearly subordinate and mixed in with the commercial. The general plan cites the junction as a model project for a mixed use commercial. But you know, you can walk across the street and see that the junction is not commercial here with residential completely and clearly delineated. This is mixed use commercial, not mixed use residential. And so the emphasis on there needs to be commercial. And this largely 75% of the rezone will be dedicated to residential, which is backwards, in my opinion, from what the general plan anticipates. The general plan is just barely a year old, and there doesn't seem to be any concrete justification in the proposal provided for deviating from it. If I'm thinking correctly, it was adopted in August of last year. As previously stated, based on comments I've made, based on the memo from West Haven City that you have access to, West Haven City would strongly recommend and encourage Weber County, the commissioners making the planning commission making the recommendation, and then the county commissioners' ultimate action. We would strongly recommend and encourage the county to, at a minimum, table the proposal until the traffic issues can be fully vetted and designed, and until the applicant presents the county with a plan that's in harmony with the Western Weber general plan. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon or evening, whatever it is. My name is Dave Prevedel, 4602 West, 4950 South, Hooper, but I also own property over adjacent to this, close to this proposal. And in lieu of time, I am speaking for 7 individuals. I'm speaking for myself, David Prevedel, Glenna Prevedel, Karen Prevedel, Wayne Prevedel, Angelina Kellett, Wes Kellett, and Wayne Prevedel. So, Mr. Burton, could I have your first slide back up? Would that be too much for me? I'm going to basically address the zoning amendment application submitted by the proponent. And just that first one you had right there was right there. Okay, the 7 of us control the agriculture area around this project. I don't know how many, we got a few hundred acres or what, but we are the proponents or the owners and the control of the agricultural interests around this project. And I'll rewrite from here. We, the undersigned, comprised of the adjacent landowners, hereby protest the rezoning based on conditions, misinformation, and undisclosed impacts of the project on our way of life, agriculture, business, and livelihoods. And I mentioned I'll go down through the zoning amendment page by page. I'll start with the project narrative right there, and I don't want to be reading too much to you, but you can see in italics the first paragraph. The vision of the developer is a quality country neighborhood for families. Should be a great place for families, seniors, and others, and the intent is to have a mixed use multi-family residence and commercial space with a rural design that harmonizes with surrounding areas. I don't know if Edgar Allan Poe or Ernest Hemingway wrote that paragraph. It's that facetious. I mean, you can't even understand what it's talking about. Mr. Burton, I couldn't quite hear him back there. They mentioned there's 7.5 acres here with probably 2.5 acres with commercial lots out in front. That leaves about 5 acres. On those 5 acres, 14 six-plex buildings for a total of 84 units. This is an apartment building, ladies and gentlemen, no less. This is the reason he has not annexed into West Haven City. He wants to pull the wool over your eyes in Weber County. They're putting an apartment complex in the middle of an agriculture area. We're totally against that. These are not conditions that are accurate or conditions that we as neighbors desire. There are several multifamily apartments with vacancy rates on Midland Drive, just 3 miles east of this. Need to keep those apartment buildings up on Midland Drive. Keep them out of the agriculture areas. Our way of life is being compromised with this development. We're already being crowded. To the north, the proposal is a small commercial development with a beauty salon, and other developed spaces are vacant, and new clusters are being added and continue to be built on these other commercial areas right adjacent to this place. And they're not able to fill the vacancies. I mentioned there's 84 units. And being a conservative estimate, if we say there's 4 residents per unit, that's an increased population of 336 people, including children, on 5 acres. That's a town. If each of those 2 children enter the school system, that's in roughly 168 additional children. And I'm using, just remember, that average of 4 people per dwelling. With an average of 30 students per classroom, this is 6 additional classrooms in the school system will be needed just for this development on 5 acres. Compounding this congestion is the proponent also has a 78 unit single family development under business. That's down at the bottom of that slide. You see that alkali area? That's that Westwood property. That's all under development right now by the proponent. And right north of this proposal is the Highland subdivision with 25 units. In addition, on the other side of that, to the north is a 35 unit development. And right immediately to the, you can see Canesville Elementary up there in the top center of the thing. This is one of the most crowded and overloaded school districts. Right now it has six grades. My granddaughter is in one of those. I mean, you talk about what would we have done when we went to school? Six grade classes in one school. And this is going to put in another 100+ kids to that school. With these other developments and adding these 14 sixplex buildings with 84 more buildings, that will make a total of about 222 new individual housing units that are being built around us, have just been completed or proposed to be completed in the next year or two. Ladies and gentlemen, this is getting crowded and it's affecting our way of life. It's threatening our businesses and our agriculture things. The housing demand that they're stating is overstated. I've included in Appendix A some estimates. We all know the economy is changing on the housing with the high interest rates. Weber County fell 5.6% last year in housing prices. But we're not even talking housing. We're talking apartment buildings here. I'd like to address the summary on page 1. It mentions that between January and February 2023, the Weber Planning Commission had work sessions and accepted an application for rezoning. We of landowners were not informed of such meetings or proposals, and the proponent had not done any research, any outreach to us for scoping or notification. Our first notice of this meeting, this building, was this postcard you guys sent out to us. Is that how we want to do business in this county? We'll send you a surprise. You're getting 400 people next to you. I think we feel these actions are in violation of our public trust that we hold with West Haven City and Weber County. I heard the proponent or the lady speak on from West Haven City, and we would recommend this area be annexed into West Haven. Because all it's doing is fragmenting the implementation, and I'm not against development. I'm probably a romanticist at heart, but I'm a realist by nature. I know we're going to have development, but we need to have planned, comprehensive, and proper development. In on page 7, county rezoning procedure, the proponent states in paragraph 2 that the rezoning to C1 with townhomes behind the commercial development will be not too incompatible with existing develops in the area. We highly disagree with this statement, and the proponent is making his own judgment and opinion without supporting data. It's known that agriculture areas with animals, smells, dust, etc. are highly non-compatible with residential areas. And we have them. We have animals. We have my daughter and son-in-law has a horse business. Several others raise cattle. On page 8, county rezoning procedure, our research shows that the proponent completely unknown and possibly hid the new Hinckley Drive Road that is on the Northern Transportation Plan, the West Davis Highway proposed map, and a detailed road concept map prepared by West Haven City. I would ask you to turn to Appendix B, please, and you will see a fold-out map. But then let's look at the West Davis map and the Legacy Highway map. This road is on the drawing board. Now, I'm not a proponent of this road. It's going to take 4 acres of my own hayfield. But again, where is the responsible planning? This road is going through that proposed development. And here we're talking a main arterial road feeding the Legacy Highway north. So this is probably a 4 to 6 lane wide highway coming through here. Comes right through that property. And the big problem is you have a 5-way intersection at 3300 south, 3500 west. And these are high-speed roads. That is a major design problem. I don't know if they're going to have cold reliefs, on-ramps, what. But you got 5 roads, high-speed roads, one of them a major arterial road to the Legacy, convening at this one intersection at this development. Now, I will ask you to open this folded map. I've been in government a long time, my whole career. I have never seen quite the disjoint I'm seeing between West Haven City and Weber County. I go in and talk to Weber County engineers. They say, what road? I talk to West Haven and say, yeah, we're doing our preliminary design. We're having meetings on this, and we're going to be acquiring rights of way next year. You see where this road up here goes through this property? And that's that. How are we going to design that intersection? We can't. Engineers have got to be on that property to do to make it make it safe for the public. That's a major design problem. I'm going down here, county rezoning procedure, page 8. The adequacy of facilities. And I mentioned the proponent admits not reaching out to schools in his application. I think he did this on purpose because Canesville Elementary, just as I mentioned, is just two blocks to the north. Something that isn't in my notes that I worry about these things. We just said we're going to have 100, if 2 kids per unit go to school. That's 130 kids. How are we gonna get, and they're on the south side of this new big road. The elementary's 2 blocks on the north side. How are we gonna get 130 kids across the 6-lane highway every day? And back and forth. That's not a crossing walk with a guard with a flag. No planning, no mention, nothing. And we'll go on page 9, you saw right here. The proponent said they're gonna make these donations and commitments to parks and overspace. Well, they're actually taking away and impacting open space and agriculture. The statements are misleading and confusing. If they're gonna make donations, why don't they make donations to classrooms at the school or the police department, or somebody's got to support the utilities for this development? Okay, on the motion model, which we saw Mr. Burton show on the thing, you basically have 3 decisions. Well, our recommendations are, number 1, a motion for a positive recommendation should definitely be denied here. Number 2, a motion to table the proposal should be the first thing you consider. The proposal needs more time for review. It is significantly lacking in specific information, and most important of all, much more public notice and outreach needs to occur. Building 14 sixplex buildings for a total of 84 units is too dense of a development for an agricultural setting. The bottom line, and this again is the necessity, and I plead with you guys, you've got to coordinate with West Haven City, because I'm talking cumulative effects across 2 jurisdictional boundaries. You cannot address this application as a single unit. It has implication and has to be joined in analysis and considered with the impacts occurring right across the line in West Haven City.
Mr. President, if you can wrap up your comments.
Pardon?
Could you wrap up your comments for us
Yes,
in
I
the
will,
interest
sir.
of time,
Thank
please?
you. And so in conclusion, I think I've addressed a lot of my concerns to you. Again, number 3 on the last page, denying this proposal is our preferred course of action. It is definitely not supported by the general public. It's contrary to the health, safety, and welfare of the general public, and it's not ready for this to be implemented. School overcrowding and major highways and proposed major highways to support the legacy highway have not even been mentioned. The cumulative effects analysis on schools, roads, and utilities is just isn't there. And I'll let you read my last paragraph. There's a lawsuit, maybe you heard about it, on an amendment change in Morgan County. Now, I'm not threatening anything, but I'm just trying to make you aware there is going to be maybe some case law changes coming down on these amendments to on annexation, or on on amendments to zoning maps. And I appreciate your time. And again, I'm speaking for 7 people as signed on the document. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Burns?
Yeah, Pat Burns, 2702 North Burns Lane. Good to see you guys. I don't have anything to do with this development, but I wanted to just talk about planning and put at least my 2 cents in. One thing I can definitely say for Charlie and the staff is they are big on roads, connectivity, and making sure it's all accurate. If they signed off on it and gave a positive recommendation, I don't know anything about it, but if they did, I know all the developments I've done, they've been unbelievably thorough. I believe this does meet with the master plan. I agree with, that it should go in this area. Commercial needs doors. If you want some commercial in it, you gotta have doors to support it. You wanna talk about affordable housing, this is the best unit for affordable housing. It's not apartments, it's townhomes. It's great. I think it needs to be there. Again, I do not have anything to do with this development whatsoever. I think it's great planning and I think it's a good place for it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Molesky.
Good evening, Toby Molesky, 775 West 17th Street, Unit B in Ogden. I do have something to do with this development. I represent the sellers on the sale of this transaction. They are just exercising their property right under the general plan recorded that was adopted under this zone. As far as the road is concerned, Mr. Burns did mention that Weber County is on it, and Mr. Burton has done a great job of presenting this to you. I can tell you that the owners have received funds from WACOG to purchase right of way. Now, I don't know if that was on 35th or 3500 or 3300, but having been a member of WACOG before, I know that all the cities and the counties work together in conjunction to make sure that these roads projects go together and work smoothly. So I'm sure it's on the radar. If not, it will be a part of the development agreement to hold that right of way back and or donate it to the county or to the city or whoever it is at that time. So other than that, a lot of conjecture goes in why they shouldn't be built or why it shouldn't be done. And a lot of the times that's just public clamor. So thank you for your time. Have a good day.
Lorraine Vanderwood, 3724 South, 3650 West. As I've sat and listened to this, when I first heard the planner, he said that this was slated for mixed-use residential. Well, I think it's mixed-use commercial that this is slated for on your proposed plan for West Weber or Western Weber. So how we're coming in with all this residential when it's slated for commercial in that area is my big concern. I agree with everything Sherry said. I don't know what the negotiations were necessarily with West Haven, but I hear this plan change all the time. I know when they came to West Haven, there was over 100 units. It was going to be apartments. When I went to the Parks Division a couple of weeks ago, it was a different number. So we're just trying to change the number to appease whoever we're going to, whether it's going to be Weber County or West Haven. I just think you need to stick with your general plan. I mean, you just did the general plan less than a year ago, and I don't see anything that's changed in that area to warrant anything different. Thank you.
Angie Killett, 3299 West, 3300 South. I'm just east of this property. And I don't want to be too repetitive about what people have said. I don't support this. I did try and call the Weber School District since I got that postcard in the mail to try and get some numbers to wrap my head around and maybe to present to you guys. I couldn't get a phone call back. I did speak with the secretary at my daughter's school. She goes to Canesville with some of your kids. You know how full it is. There's 1,000 kids at Canesville right now. I said, can you tell me what you're supposed to be operating at? And she says, we've been full for so long, I couldn't even tell you. They got portable units out. And I says, well, how many kids is the new elementary supposed to take from you? And she says, maybe 100, 200, but we're already so full. We don't know if we'll see a difference. So I'm just here. I'm concerned about my daughter's classroom size. She has six grade classes, 30 students plus in every class. They're already out in portable units. This would go in that school boundary. And I've never been to one of these before, learning a lot, coming in, we bought my grandparents' place now. So I'm trying to get all sped up on property rights and all these developments. And I can't believe that the school numbers aren't talked about more. That's really concerning to me as a mom. So I would just ask that you definitely look into this more from the school capacity wise. Police, I'm just down the road. I want police and fire support if I ever need it. So thank you.
Any more public comment on this item? If none, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing on this item.
Chair, I'll make a motion to close public hearing.
I've got a motion. Do I got a second?
Second.
Second, any discussion on the item? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we are now out of a public hearing, back in our public meeting on this item. Just wanna, I guess, first off, a concern I have, just because it's one of the big things that I've tried to work through, and maybe it was just a mishap just because we're used to just dealing with the sewer district or Central Weber sewer, but where we haven't received all the approval letters on this. Steve, can you address that a little bit? First
Sure.
off.
Yeah. We've received a letter from Central Weber Sewer. Now, whether or not this applicant ultimately goes with Central Weber Sewer.
But there's got to be a transmission line to get it there. I believe what Shari was saying from West Haven is it's got to tie into West Haven Special Services District to get the sewer to Central Weber.
So backing up a little bit, this is a rezone and it's a legislative decision, and the rezoning chapter of the code says that there needs to be a letter of availability, or even less than that, acknowledgement from a water provider that the applicant plans to connect to.
If Central Weber doesn't have lines, they've got to connect to West Haven's line before they get to Central Weber, I guess is my point.
Sure, but the applicant has provided a letter of
From
of
West Haven?
No, from Central Weber Sewer.
So they're
saying that
gonna
they
run a
could-
line all the way to Central Weber?
I don't know that we need to get into the specifics of that. Typically, we don't at a rezone.
Well,
but we
it's
can
been
if
a
you'd like.
point of mine. I want all the approvals before we see it, and obviously we don't have one.
You should be looking at the land use code and what it says.
I know it asks for the approvals of the areas that's gonna serve it. And this is obviously in West Haven Special Services District, from my understanding, from what I heard from the public hearing. So is that correct?
I don't know the exact the boundaries of the West Haven district.
Okay. All right, Commissioner. Whichever you choose.
Just a couple of things from our comments. I appreciate tonight. The first one that hits home for me, because part of the reason I'm up here is because I was one of you, and schools were my number one concern. There was a new development going in. I was concerned about how that would affect our school. And what I've learned is the school system is completely separate from what we're doing right now. I'm very frustrated by it personally. I think we need more support of our schools, but this process here, we cannot even take it into consideration. I wish we could. I wish there was a way that we could share funds or ask something from the developer, but that is not in our purview. So just to clarify that, I'm very involved with the schools, and I'd like to see more happen, but this won't happen. To alleviate maybe a little bit of your concerns, South Ogden City did the same thing to us. They built a very large townhome and apartment complex right on the edge of South Ogden City, next to unincorporated Weber County. And all of those students were to attend UNT Elementary. We were shocked. The principal was waiting for everyone to arrive, and there were 5 to 10 students. So I don't know if this is a statistic, but in general, single family homes may have a certain amount of children come, but townhomes and apartments generally attract residents who do not have as many school-age children. It seems you're talking more children under 5 or 6 that are moving into these smaller, more dense, more affordable housing units. That's just kind of a side note. We were very concerned about it, and it has not affected UNT Elementary. The single family homes are more of a consideration for schools, but again, not something we can do here, but I wanted to at least address that. I wanted to clarify from the notice, which I appreciated, the memorandum from West Haven City. I'm trying to understand it. I interpreted what they wrote, that they wanted to see single family houses in this area, but the general plan for West Haven City says commercial. And I know the general plan wasn't done willy-nilly, and I remember the conversation about what's next to unincorporated Weber County, what do we put here? So we looked at West Haven's general plan, and that was part of Steve's information, that they said, it said commercial. So if somebody knows, is West Haven expecting commercial? Is that what they want, or is it single family? Because I was surprised to see on page 5, it says there are no multifamily housing projects or townhomes in the surrounding area. West Haven City's planning documents support the continuation of single family housing in this surrounding area. So I guess that's a disconnect I'm concerned with, because any on the planning commission, or Steve, can you speak to that? Or if we can ask West Haven City.
The general plan shows commercial C2 there. So that public document, I think, is all we have to go by, assuming it's up to date.
I agree.
Okay, so that was confusing to me. Because I'm hearing we want commercial, we want single family housing. So I'm not sure what West Haven City wanted, but we can only go off of the general plan that we created based on the general plan. And seeing the road connectivity plan for the future, it doesn't really seem like a great place for a lot of single family housing. I was trying to, sorry, I made some other notes, just making sure. I can take a break if anyone else has anything else.
I think I'll address a couple. I mean, Mr. Privedel brought up a concern, I guess, of the meeting that was held in January. That was a work session item. Public notice normally don't go out for work session items. I think that's probably why that took place and you guys weren't noticed. There's some the county does a very good job of notifying to what state statute says they have to do in sending those notices out and who they go to. And either Liam or Charlie can kind of speak to that. There's a certain, and I can't remember off the top of my head what the footage is within that property that's got to get those notices, but 500 feet. So I mean, there's nothing here that I'm aware, in this work session that was mentioned back in January. I wasn't at that meeting, but I did listen to the meeting, and but it was just a kind of a conceptual plan work session. We have those quite often with developers when they come in and kind of ask about the proposed subdivisions. At that time, that's when they propose some apartments in the area. I want to jump back and hit on a few things. I agree with I agree with most of the statements that's been here, but I guess I was kind of shocked when this come before us as a mixed use residential. And I guess I'm going to take blame on that for being naive to knowing what went in that general plan. I was a very big part of working through that general plan with the rest of my commissioners up here and the public. And, my thought on that is kind of like Commissioner Wickern said, it's in an annexation area to West Haven. We kind of tried to model what West Haven had there. And when it went in red, I guess it was my fault for not doing due diligence to see that that's mixed use commercial. Red in my mind, a simple mind, red means commercial. And to the comment that, I think those numbers are pretty good. 75% of this is mixed use on the residential side, more so than on the commercial side. I look at the surrounding properties, the type of commercial that's being proposed there. I see it across the street. I mean, there's been 5 building pads there to go into these small offices for years. 2 of which have been built, 1 of which is fully occupied, and the second one has 1 business in it. I fully get the understanding, just like I believe it was Mr. Burns said, you're not going to get commercial without rooftops. But as Miss Pippin, sorry if I slaughter your name, I apologize. Oh, sorry. This is a commercial corridor, and I get it that, if we don't reserve these prime commercial locations, in my mind, especially on an intersection like this, like's been stated by several, I'm not a big fan of seeing that road come all the way through from 3600 either, because it puts more traffic on my road, but I get it. It's coming. The growth is coming. And that's even more reason in my mind that, you know, this needs to stay in commercial and solely in commercial. You know, I wish I'd have looked closer into this when the general plan was adopted, because this, in my opinion, should be vehicle oriented commercial, not in mixed use commercial. Which also would fall in line with what, you know, in a C2 zone, I would assume West Haven, that's more of a mixed use or a vehicle oriented type commercial in that area, more so than housing in there. You know, I think there's a few things that were missed here. You know, and I'm not saying that they're missing. I'm not pointing fingers at anybody. It's just there's some confusion when we work so closely in these neighboring cities. And I would really like to, you know, be respectful not only of the neighbors of the property, but also of the neighboring agency. Because, you know, as we went back and forth through some of these other ones, eventually someday down the road, this is going to be West Haven. You know, at some point, all of this area, I'm sure, is going to annex into that. You know, it's in their annexation declaration as it states right now. So, I'll be quiet and let some of you others speak. Those are just some of my thoughts on this at this point.
Chair, I think our primary responsibility up here is to do what's best for our community and our citizens, our neighbors. And this is one of those projects that I agree with what the majority of the statements by our community has given to us. We may not have control over what the schools do, but I still think it should be a consideration when we're making a plan. When we are planning commission, we need to take into account those types of things. Yes, there's businesses there already, but as you stated, Chair, half of them are vacant. Doesn't mean that this isn't what should be in the future. I just personally feel like this is not the right time for it. It's not ready for it. It's my personal thoughts and feelings.
To clarify, Commissioner Neville, are you saying you don't think it's ready for what was proposed, the little bit of commercial and the residential, or not
for any of it?
commercial?
For any of it, honestly.
Any development at all?
At this point, no.
Any other comments on this, commissioners?
I'm shocked that the county doesn't put a road that's supposed to stop.
Oh, excuse me, can I speak to that? I've been dying to up here.
Sorry, Steve.
We're well aware of the road. And if anybody would look at the concept plan, you'd see that there is there's area that's been preserved for that connection to be made. I find it interesting and I really appreciate Sherry's comments, and she's an excellent planner, and I know her and appreciate her comments. But I struggle a little bit to be coached by West Haven City on street connection. And I believe it was planners before her, but me and my colleagues look at connections, missed connections all the time in West Haven City. And I believe someone mentioned how devoted our staff is to looking at important street connections. So we're well aware of where those connections need to be made. And that would be preserved. I believe there was someone that said that there were apartments being proposed, and that's just not true. There are not apartments being proposed. It's townhomes. Let's see. With schools, we didn't reach out to the school because I can think of 3 vacant properties that the school owns right now that they're not doing anything with. We anticipate that they know that the growth is coming, and that's why they're buying properties and holding onto them. But that can be a reason for denial if you wanted it to be schools. So thanks.
I agree, Steve. That's the point. They're not doing anything with it right now. And we know the school district is famous for being in the real estate business, right? Holding property and then selling it, not for their own use that way. So we can't anticipate what they're going to do. We've been blindsided by that before. So
sure,
that's one thing we should note on that.
Yeah. And I want to be clear, as staff, I'm not advocating for this to be approved. I'm simply providing a recommendation that you can disregard completely if you'd like. But I wanted to make sure that I addressed those things that were said because I disagreed with them.
can I provide a little bit of clarification? Steve, I think where the misunderstanding of what was originally proposed or what people thought was proposed with the apartment, excuse me, was that was part of our the little work session we did where we're just kind of getting it, where I think the developer was trying to get the feelers out for what would be there. So
Sure,
that's probably been communicated. So that's why people may have been mistaken.
Sorry, no, he referenced my staff report and said that they were proposing apartments, and it's just not true.
Essentially sixplex, conjoined sixplex buildings, right?
Yeah, townhomes.
Would you like any questions for the applicant on this?
Not yet, sorry. Do you want to just clarify the different, I think I'm noticing some confusion on a sixplex compared townhomes compared to apartments. Maybe Steve can give us a little bit of clarification.
When the developer originally came in, they were looking to maximize density, and they proposed, I think it was a 3 or maybe even a 4 level apartments where you'd have there would be a front door on each of those levels, and they would be condominiumized up, and there would be hundreds of units there was what was originally proposed. But a townhome is a dwelling, a single family. Sorry, it's not a single family. It's a dwelling where the owner typically owns from the ground up to the sky, and they're not stacking on top of each other with units. This is one townhome unit, goes all the way up. If they propose 2 floors, it'll be 1 floor, 2 floor. That's a townhome unit, and then right next door, it's the same thing.
6 of those units in each plex, right?
The way that this developer had it shown was that there'd be a possibility of 5-plex, 6-plex, 7-plex, all separated from each other, but each building may have 5, 6, or 7 dwellings in it.
Thank you, Steve.
Mr. Chairman, just a little bit of history from a staff perspective. Steve's done a really good job at presenting his findings and his recommendation. When this item came to us, we weren't quite sure what to do with it. We know it's in an area that's planned for mixed use, and that mixed use area on the general plan was put there deliberately. We looked at what the West Haven plan was for the area. We did see that they had C2 and C1 on these commercial nodes, and we discussed as planners and as planning commission and county commission what we want to see if development does happen on the unincorporated side of things. Now, the very first thing that I think our plan says is to look for opportunities to get property annexed into the city. And that was the very first direction we gave the developer when he came asking us questions. And I don't know if the developer came and asked us questions before he went to West Haven or not, but we did guide him to West Haven. He started asking West Haven questions, and we were able to sit down with West Haven and have a good conversation about potential development on this property. I think they agreed that we were at a little bit of a difference in maybe what timing is in terms of whether or not this development is ripe at this time. It seemed like, as Sherry mentioned, that the city wasn't quite ready for it, despite the fact that their plan does show some commercial. Regardless, we still struggled after that because we certainly don't want to do anything against West Haven. We want to support our community partners. West Haven is certainly one of those, especially since the majority of the traffic coming to this property will be coming through West Haven. We want to be sensitive to that idea as well. And so we worked with the applicant to try and figure out maybe a few different ways to do it. I don't know if you guys remember, but one of the work session items we did discuss maybe even trying to do a street regulating plan under form-based. And it just didn't seem like half a street regulating plan where half of that intersections in West Haven, the other half is in unincorporated, was appropriate. And so after a little bit of time, the applicant did ask the county commissioners directly whether or not they would support it. And the question came up in a work session. It wasn't in a public meeting. And so there's no obligation for the county commissioners to stand by their support for the application. But they did say, let's get it going through the process in the way that you guys see before you, and let's hear what the planning commission has to say about it. I think the county commission will defer heavily to your recommendation tonight. But I just wanted to make sure you guys knew that as decisive and succinct and direct as Steve was, it certainly was not a slam dunk case for us. We spun our wheels a little bit on this one, trying to figure out exactly what to do and whether or not it's the right time.
Anything else for staff, commissioners? The applicant want to speak? I see you back there just waiting to.
Excuse me, Rick Skadden, 118 East Longman View Drive. With all due respect, with a lot of things that's been said tonight, a lot of them aren't true. A lot of them are maybe enhanced a bit to shape an opinion on something. First of all, when I met with the parks people, even though maybe the project could allow for 70 to 80 doors, I'm looking at 60 to 64. Half those are going to be 2-bedroom units. And I don't think 4 people are going to live in a 2-bedroom unit. But mostly, I guess, they're not a for rent product. It is a for sale product that people can afford and get in and move forward. As far as the road, as Mr. Molesky pointed out, they've already bought the property that skirts our property to put that road in. So our project's not going to have any effect on that road. They've already purchased it. Thirdly, actually it's 177 doors over on the Westwood project that we're developing as we speak. We've already donated 5, excuse me, I've been battling the cold. We've already donated 5 acres to the city to provide them the property for that road. Now, we gave a little, they gave a little, and we've tried to work through this. I think you can see the response we got from West Haven City by what you've received from them. We've met with them 3 or 4 times. I met with the city and Kroger in discussion of putting a grocery store in the area, which I was open to. They're just 4 or 5 years out at the time. Maybe it's changed, but at the time in that meeting, I attended. And it didn't work. Thirdly, we offered to the city to sell the property to them. And we never heard back from our offer. So apparently they're turning that down. I apologize for my voice. It's going to be a very rural type filling product. It'll be one with, there will be a tot lot. The commercial there, I think a mixed use development, regardless of which direction you want to classify it as, it relies on each other to succeed. It relies on the doors for the commercial and the commercial for the doors. I think the hope is to keep some businesses in there, to keep the people local there. That road that comes in, there was also stated that there's going to be a 5-way intersection there. That's not the case. 3300 is going to dive into the new road coming off Hinckley. And it's not going to be a 5-way intersection there. 3300, as you guys know, is already being widened. And through WACOG and the city and the county have an agreement, and that's almost done. So there's a lot of things there, I think, trying to paint negative picture on this. But, you know, the community is important. As you notice, I call it Canesville Crossing. A lot of people don't know that that was Canesville. I grew up out there. I know where Canesville was. My kids went to Canesville Elementary. So it's important to me to put a product on the ground that A, looks good, B, people living there can be proud to be there. And thirdly, what about the rights of future land, future owners who already live in the county that can afford a home like that and stay in the county where they want to be. They have rights too. And I think that's an important piece to this is it's a product. I have nephews, you know, there's talk that there's not much around there, but we're all very familiar with Salt Point over there. What's it within 3 miles probably of the product? We don't want a Salt Point there, and that's not our intent. But I have 6 nephews and nieces living in there. They team up because they have to team up to afford the rent. But this is a product with some builder financing plans and that we can get younger families, younger couples in these where they can afford them. And they want to live out here. They don't want to, not to be rude, they don't want to come this way. They want to stay out there. And families with young kids, and I have several in my family, they want to buy, they don't want to rent. They want to live out there. And this is the type of product that would provide for that. It's one that we're very amenable to architectural design and requirements. I think our commercial building really brings, none of the pictures show it, but I love it. We have a silo on the corner. If that couldn't look more farm-like, I don't know what would. The silo area is the HOA office building for the product. I just really think it's the right product at a needed time. You know, we talk about sales and different things. I have a gal that works in my insurance office. She's 22 years old. She just went and looked at a house in Roy, 1,504 square feet with a carport, $465,000. I can get them in this townhome for $390,000 to $410,000 in a brand new facility that they can enjoy and call their own. I have no intent to make this a rental. I have no intent to make it apartments. And I don't know where 84 doors come from, but we're talking just because actually we were working with Steve at the time when I met with the parks, and we felt it'd be around 60 to 64 doors, and that's where it would end up. So with that, I just feel like some half truths have been told. Wanted to clarify some of it. In the future of this project, whether it's West Haven or Weber County, I work in West Haven a lot. I have no problem if something gets approved that if we move it into their city, I'm all for it. I support them. They've done well by me. And I feel like I feel like maybe they're couple of items they've used to try and use as a weapon against me is not fair. We've overcome those. As far as the sewer comes, I will get you what you need because I've had that conversation. I don't have it on paper, and we will work forward. But I feel like right project, right time, and a great opportunity. As you know, that big road's coming in, that traffic's not going to touch that road. Nobody will ever notice an uptick in traffic there. We're talking an 80-foot, what we deeded to the city over on our other project was an 80-foot wide right of way. So it's not a country road. It's not a road that's going to really fill what, in my opinion, 160 to 180 people living in that area would cause. And with that, I respect your time. Thank you for the opportunity to stand before you, and look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Just one sec, Mr. Ken. Any questions? The developer from the commission? You're free to go. Sorry.
Thank you.
Just didn't want to have you make you come back. Okay, commissioners. Thoughts, comments? I've already put my comments out there. I agree with the other comments that's been made. I mean, there's two parts of that in my mind when it comes to the schools. Unfortunately, as we've seen in the past, trying to work with the schools on the high school property, schools aren't willing to work with us. I do agree with the concern, even though, you know, I'm going to mention it. The school's crowded. especially when you look at neighboring schools, there's a lot of kids up there. But on the flip side of that, I mean, we as the planning commission can't control what the school district does. They're their own body. You know, we tried to make some recommendations when the high school came through, and they basically give us the middle finger and walked away. Yeah.
Chair. I don't feel that way about the school district. I have different opinions, but just to clarify, I was told that we can work so well and support the school system. So are we able to ask developers for a fee to go towards the school system for the impact they're creating?
No, there's actually a specific provision in state code that says you can't do that. Now, if you want a reason to deny a legislative item, you can always find a reason to deny a legislative item. You got full discretion to do that. But I think the points about planning for schools and planning for the school district are very on point. It's a challenge to do. The school district has its own edicts under state code to provide for its own burgeoning population, and that's not a small feat for them. You hear about school districts all across the state shutting down schools because all of a sudden their neighborhoods are aging and the kids are moving out. And so it's not easy to do. It's not on us or our responsibility to try and second guess whether or not the school district is planning appropriately. But we do know that they are buying property, and they occasionally talk to us about it, and every once in a while let us talk to them about it.
And so I guess my point is that financially, we cannot support the school district, and really what the school district needs for students is finances. And if we approve more building, we increase the student population and we can increase the amount of revenue they receive per house. Problem is, that's retroactive. We give them the students and then they're scrambling to build the schools. So we don't have control over them. But I just want to say, I want to clarify that I wish we could do more in this body to make developers accountable for the school situation, but we cannot. So that's not really the point. I drove to this property today. I wanted to see what was there and analyze the situation. I can see where the developer is coming from because the property just next to it is configured very similarly to this one. It has commercial along the corner, and instead of townhomes, it has, in my opinion, not the best single family home situation. It's very inexpensively constructed from the outside. We're talking 3-side stucco with some facade, straight brick. And I know they were doing this to try to make them affordable. I think townhomes are a much better option for quality building because those single family homes, I think, missed some of the requirements that I would hope we would put into a development like this to make sure that they would be aesthetic as well as functional. And the community has no street trees. Bill, I'm sure, would love to hear that. And that is very unfortunate for the community. It doesn't have the feel that I would like to see in this community. So I see where the developer is coming from, because in my opinion, what he's proposed looks like what's just across the street. And the street there by the school, there are bike lanes, and it looks like this is the closest Weber County unincorporated has to developed infrastructure. So as far as it not being the time, I don't know where the time is appropriate if it's not here, because this is the closest we have to infrastructure in Weber County. I don't know. Can you think of something closer to existing infrastructure right next to our developed roads? Now, whether it should be commercial or whether it should be the mixed, that is definitely the question. But I can see where the developer is coming from, because it, in my opinion, looks like what is across the street that has been approved by, that's in West Haven City.
Commissioner Wicken, when you talk about infrastructure, which road did you take to get out there? And which one did you return home on?
I went home, I did a loop around through the corner.
So if you would have went straight east back on that road, you would have come to Midland Drive,
Yeah.
which is a huge cluster right now.
Mhm.
We've had a lot of accidents there lately.
Mhm.
So when we're talking about timeline, it might be the appropriate place for this proposal, but not until that new road comes in. It's going to be a factor for it. But the infrastructure honestly isn't there for more development because of those conditions. And living close to there,
Mhm.
those roads are congested and it's been a problem, especially with the construction. That's created more issues, which I know the construction is gonna alleviate some of that eventually, but the infrastructure truly isn't there, in my opinion. And when you say that you feel like, you understand the developer wanting to make that change because it's not what you would see as, I don't remember the word, appeasing. Was you meaning the development across the street or what's currently there where they're wanting to propose a development?
I'm talking about what he's proposed looks like what is across the street, currently developed, approved by West Haven City.
Okay, I was taking it as you were saying what is currently there isn't what you would find appeasing.
Oh,
And I was gonna
no,
say, oh,
there's
careful,
nothing
because
there.
that's what most of us want.
No, I'm not saying about that. I'm talking about what's proposed looks like what's across the street and from what I saw. And infrastructure always goes through those improvements. You get congestion before you get the money to make the improvement. So it's at the appropriate stage of that cycle. As awful as it is, there is the land, there is the right of way to improve it. And it isn't until we get more of the development dollars that we're going to make those improvements that we need to see out there. In my opinion.
So that brings a question for staff that if that's appropriate, is that okay? So with this, if we're talking about the dollars that we're gonna get, if this does go through, what's to stop West Haven from annexing it in? Then those dollars not coming to the county.
Nothing. And that was the point of the general plan and planning for this area like this. I mean, we are saying annex in. We are aware that there are a number of different jurisdictions on our periphery that aren't looking at things quite as ambitiously in terms of development as we are on their periphery. And we've found that elected officials don't always stay elected when they're pro-development in some of these communities. And so it's oftentimes the case when a commercial development or a higher density development goes in that potentially pulls in a higher tax base, they're the first things to go into the community through annexation, because that's just revenue the city's missing. And development fees and impact fees and all that the community's missing.
So it might be safe to assume that these fees that would go to potentially most likely go to West Haven City, since this is on a border of West Haven City for the county, we're not going to see that much in unincorporated. It's going to go towards the main city. So
if the city annexes it,
it's probably not really going to benefit us that would be approving this at this time.
But
right?
I don't see that needs to. What you're talking about is what's in West Haven that needs to be improved. So it will go to improve the infrastructure to people are going to be coming from the east to the west. So it'll be going to the appropriate area.
Maybe. Maybe. Okay. Charlie.
You bet.
Any other comments from the commission?
I mean, I think my biggest concern is the sewer thing. Like you said, if it's West Haven that's having to service it, maybe that's something that we need to consider.
Well, I agree. It needs to be addressed before it moves on. I mean, that's, as I've stated in the past, that's part of the application process that shouldn't go before us until it's there. And like I said, there's probably some miscommunication because we're not used to being in these other service areas, or abutting up to them. But I think that's something that needs to be addressed first, but before it moves on. But I mean, still, even at that, I stick to my comments I made. This intersection's prime commercial. My opinion would be is deny this request and we go into open up the general plan and we fix it there, because I mean, at the end of the day, that's what this intersection needs as these homes come. I mean, as it's been stated, there's a development directly adjacent to it that's coming with 177 units along that corridor. Plus, there's some developments that are starting to be proposed further to the west on 3300 that's going to bring in a couple hundred units. There's a lot that's coming and like I said, I agree wholeheartedly that rooftops are going to bring the commercial, and the commercial's not going to come. I mean, Mr. Skadden stated he met with Kroger, and it's not the time. And I agree, it's not the time for the area. The rooftops aren't there. They're not going to support it. But if we don't preserve the areas for the potential future commercial to come in and preserve the areas that they're going to want to go in, like an intersection like this, we're not going to see the commercial come either. So I kind of, based on a few things, I just don't feel it's the right time. I don't feel it's the right use for the area, especially at the time. But, so yeah. But if there's no further comments on it, we scared Charlie away. Oh yeah, sorry. This time of year, the county shuts the air off for us, so we sit in here and sweat at night, and then when wintertime comes, we freeze because they turn the heat off on us too. So I apologize for it getting warm in here. So okay. Nothing else, then I will entertain a motion on this item. I'd make it, but I can't.
Chair, I'll make a motion. I motion to recommend denial on file number ZMA 2023-07 with the findings that are in our staff report. Is that enough? And that
Findings, yep. So when we, because this is a recommendation on the county commission, it's normally good to just to state what just the basis of why you're recommending the denial, just so it gets passed along.
Because it may not be okay. My basis is that I don't feel like the general plan that this meets what we were intending with the general plan. It may be what the general plan says, but it's not what we were intending, and I'd like us to revisit that. And it's currently not fitting for our infrastructure at this time.
I got a motion. Do I got a second? I'll second it. I can do that much. Okay, any discussion?
I have a problem. Staff has recommended. I have a problem. Turn it down because it does meet what we stated in our plan. It's really hard for somebody to go out and purchase property and then come back at a later date and say, we've changed our mind. It's probably not fair to the people that are selling that property. But I'm also torn on what we talked about here back and forth. And I kind of think if this is close to West Haven and they want to control it, then maybe they ought to take a second look. Maybe they ought to talk to them. I don't know if that can be accomplished, but maybe it should be tabled to give them some time.
Well, I've got a motion for denial on the table right now, so we got to move through with that motion first. See where it goes, and then if it don't pass, then I would entertain your motion, but we got to move through on this one first. So anyways, any further comments on this motion to deny? Okay, with that, I will call for a vote. Commissioner Klontz.
Aye.
Commissioner Neville.
Aye.
Commissioner Wickern.
No.
Commissioner Favero.
No.
Commissioner McCormick.
Nay.
Chair votes aye. So that motion dies because we're at a tie again. Twice in one night. Okay, well, I'll open the floor back up to another motion or further discussion.
I like Commissioner, I never remember your last name, Uncle Jeb.
We can just go with Uncle Jed.
I would support the tabling motion for a little bit more discussion with West Haven. I'm not ready to, I think everything he said, he's right on point.
So is that a motion to table?
Yes, but I think we need to state it more clearly.
And basically use motion to table based on future meetings with West Haven.
Yeah, based on future meetings with West Haven.
Okay.
Let's roll with that.
And can I throw one more on there? Just a recommendation.
Sure.
Getting the sewer stuff figured out as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, I've got a motion to table. Do I have a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, I will call for a vote on this item. Commissioner Klontz.
Aye.
Commissioner Neville.
Aye.
Commissioner Wickern.
Aye.
Commissioner Favero. Commissioner McCormick.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. That item is tabled for further discussion with West Haven and figuring the sewer out. Okay, thank you all for coming. Oh, I guess we're not over yet. I gotta flip the page. Sorry. Next item on our agenda is public comments for items not on today's agenda. Anybody wish to speak for stuff not that we already talked about tonight? Okay. Oh, sorry, Mr. Molesky.
just an item that was Toby Molesky, 775 West 17th Street, Unit B, Ogden, Utah. These two items were on the agenda, but I understand the process of once you're done, you're done. I thought it was interesting that the school issue was brought up on this issue, but not brought up on the previous one for the development of those R3 and R1 units. So just as a point of clarification.
And I mean, I can't speak for the school district, but West Weber Elementary is not nearly at capacity. There's still parts of that school that's not even been filled yet. So
Again, none of us are on the school board, so
Yeah.
we don't know the plans.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Any other public comments not on tonight's agenda?
Oh, okay, fantastic. Never mind, guys.
You must have been on the consent items. Well, sorry that you sat through the whole meeting but yeah. Okay. Seeing no further public comments for this, items not on tonight's agenda. Remarks from the planning commissioners. Just a reminder, next Thursday and Friday, is the APA planning conference over here. If you signed up, please come. It'll be there's actually June sent out and thank you for sending that out and sharing it with us, June, the agenda. There's some good sessions. There's some good sessions that's being put on by our planning staff. So I think it'll be real interesting and it's neat to see it here in our own backyard. And Steve, I'm jealous that you get to take the agritourism to the fish farm. Yeah, I do. No, I'm just kidding.
Get there early. There's always a sign up sheet.
I'm sure.
Just when you get there.
Planning commissioners, anything else you'd like to add? Okay. Acting Director Charlie.
Just want to remind everyone that there's a planning conference next week and
I stole your thunder.
You did. Nope, no further.
Mr. Liam. Okay. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thanks. I'm sorry, we were moving through things so fast.
How you doing?
Yeah, I know it's not, it's still an extra. I thought it was great, right? I was gonna sit here and start eating. Thanks. Yeah.
Hi, Angie, how are you?